The Season 8 marketing campaign has been kicked into full effect. In this video, I want to discuss the exclusive Season 8 insider information that was released to us from Entertainment Weekly, and then compare and contrast that information to known confirmed leaks. This video will contain massive spoilers for Game of Thrones Season 8, so here's your sign and let's begin. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 1,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then, this is the most important part, make sure every notification's turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Okay, so first things first, we've actually gotten a lot clearer of an image of Cersei from the one that she was sitting on the Iron Throne, where I swore up and down that it had to be, color graded, because this is not the same color as the dress that was pictured in these leaks of her meeting with Jon Snow. Statement redacted. This is clearly a Lannister-themed dress, and I honestly cannot wait to see it on screen in Season 8. This is really showing Cersei adopting her Lannister roots. She's always been a lion through and through, and it's finally she started dressing like one. This gown, in my opinion, is very similar to the earlier gown she wore in the first few seasons. Another sort of redacted statement I need to make is that when you look at the Jaime Lannister cover for Entertainment Weekly, he clearly has Widow's Wail right there on his hip, and I've actually covered a leak very recently in my video stating that Jaime gives his sword to Arya. Now, if you look at Arya's cover of Entertainment Weekly, she cleverly has needle covered. So there's still a small possibility that she is gifted a Valyrian steel sword by Jaime Lannister. We're going to discuss the battle, or the, inside information from the actual article here in a second, but one more quick thing about these images. If you'll notice, in the background, in every single one of them, traditionally for northern color palettes, it's like a blue-white filter that they put over everything to make everyone look cold. Every single one of these images, the background was taken in King's Landing, more specifically the Dragon Pit. Now, they have been known to take pictures at different locations, from where the characters are going to actually be in the show. Hell, just last season, they took these images of all the Starks, and they clearly never went down south aside from Jon Snow last season. Now, they could have just taken these pictures when all of the actors were in Sevilla, and they had them put on their costumes, even though some of them may have been finished filming, and they just took all the pictures somewhere in Sevilla, and that's why you get this brightly lit, sunny background. But in my opinion, the more fun way to look at it is that these are all of the actors who are going to be alive in the very final episode. Now, we do know that it's expected that almost every single major character stands like a 50% chance of death in the final season, so wouldn't it be a bit unexpected if most of the cast members survive the final season? That would be going against the grain for Game of Thrones, and it would surely leave an impact. Now, the other day, I was sent a leak through the DMs on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me at Sir_Hunts, but this person stated that during the massive battle of Winterfell, Arya and Jaime are sort of paired up. When the shit hits the fan, the two of them are standing around each other training along with Grey Worm. There's not really time for any of them to react, and Arya notices that a white is stumbling towards them, so she takes action and runs towards it with her sword. Just as she does this, she stabs the white in the neck with needle, and it snaps. Jaime runs up and beheads the white that just broke her sword, and then later imbues Arya with Widow's Wail. Now, this moment, if it happens or not, but if it does, it has an extreme amount of significance. If you go all the way back to Game of Thrones Season 1, really the start of why Joffrey hates the Starks, other than him just being a giant dickbag, is because of this scene with Arya. Arya's practicing with the butcher's boy, and then Sansa and Joffrey walk up, and Joffrey's like, hey, I'm trying to show to Sansa how badass I am. Let me go pick on her sister. This resulted in Joffrey getting bit, and Arya launched his sword into the river. Now, wouldn't it be very symbolic if Arya was gifted a sword by Joffrey's father? Not just any sword, that's actually Joffrey's sword. That's Widow's Wail. Jaime took it off his body way back in Game of Thrones Season 4. Now, let's jump into this EW article. I am going to skip ahead a little bit, but don't worry, I'm going to backtrack, baby. You can actually find a link down to this article below in the description if you want to follow along. During one scene that requires a lot of standing still, not during the fighting obviously, one of the show's series regular actresses abruptly collapses. Medic on set, a crew member yells. The showrunners are out in their tent in a flash and run to her. For a few still moments, it feels like the whole cast and crew are holding their collective breath. Then the news circulates that she's okay and she just fainted, and the actress was sent home for the day and came back early the next morning. Now, I don't want to take too many wild guesses about who this could be, and the fact that it happens during a standstill kind of makes me think that it's not one of the actresses who were involved in the fighting until you reread the first few paragraphs that happened right before that. It goes, for Maisie Williams, the episode marked Arya's first Game of Thrones battle. Now, this is talking about Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3. An irony that isn't lost on her is, and she says, I skip the battle every year, which is bizarre since Arya is one of the ones who's been training the most. She says, this is my first taste of it, and I've been thrown in the deep end. A full year before filming began, Sapochnik phoned Williams to warn her, start training now, he said, because this is going to be really hard. And I said, Arya, Maisie Williams responds, yeah. Williams recalls between takes looking ultra grimy with dirt and mock blood on her face. But nothing, she says, can prepare you for how physically draining it is. It's night after night, and again, it just doesn't stop. You can't get sick. You have to look out for yourself because there's so much to do that nobody else can. There are moments when you feel just broken down as a human and want to cry. Now, don't get me wrong, Maisie Williams is a warrior, but if this is her first taste of battle, well then this sounds like she's the actress who fainted on set. And that in of itself is not a big spoilery detail, but the fact that she was pushed so hard to the limit, in my opinion, the fact that she claims this means that whatever role she plays in Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3, it's going to be intense. And we've had some very intense moments in the past with Arya before. The fact that this scene, filming it, broke the actress down this much makes me just sort of get chills for the final season. It's a little bit confusing, the fact that they said that, this collapse or this faint happened during a scene where they're standing still. It could be towards the end of the battle and they're having a bit of a face-off between the Night King and Daenerys, and maybe most of the army of the dead has been wiped out and Jon and Daenerys' forces are just standing on the ready. Several months ago, I compared this battle to the Battle of Helm's Deep, which in my opinion is one of the greatest battles ever to be shown on film. It's from The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and that battle sequence itself is over 40 minutes on screen. Now, the article actually goes on to say about Miguel Sapochnik and his preparation for the shoot. He says, when preparing for the shoot, Sapochnik tried to find a longer battle sequence in cinema history and couldn't. The closest was the nearly 40-minute Helm's Deep siege in The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which he studied to determine when the audience would get battle fatigue from too much hacking and slashing. It feels like the only way to really approach it properly is to take every sequence and ask yourself, why would I care to keep watching? And just sort of pausing for a second. Oh man, this sounds amazing. Miguel Sapochnik really knows what he's talking about, because that was the one little takeaway that I have to say my gripe was with The Lord of the Rings Two Towers, is that at points in the Battle of Helm's Deep or the Siege of Helm's Deep, it does seem a little bit too long and it wears on until Gandalf shows up on the bridge. But now relating this back to that standoff moment that potentially Maisie Williams or another actress who's a series regular on the set collapsed in, this could be towards the end of the battle or maybe even the beginning of the battle. We do know that sometimes film and television likes to film stuff in reverse, so maybe if they just got done filming the battle and then they're finally filming the initial first standoff, maybe this is why the actress collapsed on set, is because she's been tired from staying up every night for 11 weeks and filming the same sequence. Now, just sort of touching back more on what Miguel Sapochnik was saying about how, fight scenes or war sequences where there are a lot of cuts, you can tell that that was all done in post-production. He also mentions that this scene or these battle sequences were filmed all out, meaning there's little CGI. Everything is filmed in one giant sequence, which is why it took so long to film. There's nothing that really can be put in post-production, and most of these scenes that we're going to be seeing in Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3 are going to be one giant long sequence. This has always been one of the best ways to film war sequences for movies and television. To have one giant continuous shot that doesn't really take you away from the whatever it is that you're viewing. It's more immersive and realistic when you have one long drawn-out scene. Now, cut scenes and slashing and gashing type of editing is good for when you're doing a fight sequence, but when you're doing a long drawn-out battle sequence, you want to see every single detail from these long pan-out aerial shots, so it makes sense to film everything down to a T and make it one long giant sequence. I think one of the biggest shocking twists that we weren't really expecting that was included in this article was the fact that Sam the Slayer, will have a fight sequence in the Battle of Winterfell, or the Siege of Winterfell rather. While they were on set, the Entertainment Weekly article states that an EW representative notes admiringly to a producer that Sam looks like a badass in his scene. The producer turns to the others and says, "Hey, you hear that? That's the problem. Sam isn't supposed to look like a badass." Then they go on to mention that Bradley quickly adjusts his performance. The next take Sam looks more confused, awkward, and startled by each new attack. It clicks. Suddenly you're not seeing badass Bradley, who's the actor who plays Samwell Tarly, but instead you're seeing Samwell Tarly. When doing these huge fight sequences, you get carried away sometimes, Bradley mentions. What we can take away from that next season is Sam will have a scene where he's fighting multiple whites. I will say that as soon as I heard that, my first thought was Gilly and Baby Sam. What the hell has happened to them where it's gotten to the point where the whites are somehow that deep inside of Winterfell? And, oh wait, that's right. More leak sauce coming here. I was sent a leak literally last week that stated that the undead army attacks from the crypts of Winterfell. This is why the teaser has the army of the dead seemingly emanating from the crypts of Winterfell. The person mentioned that the reason why the army of the dead get the upper hand in the first part of the battle is because they attack from the crypts of Winterfell, and literally everyone in Winterfell isn't prepared for this. They mentioned that Bran can't see this happening because Bran is preoccupied with telling Jon Snow about his true lineage. Now, I don't know if the second part of that leak is true, but if EW is factual when they're confirming that Sam is somehow fighting a white, well, that means that the inhabitants of Winterfell, the major characters, all of our heroes, were unprepared for this battle. We do know that Jon Snow and Daenerys are going to be entering Winterfell by the end of the first episode, if not halfway through the first episode. So the fact that they couldn't get prepared in that short period of time lets me know that they are prepared. They just aren't ready for how the Night King decides to lay his siege upon Winterfell. And attacking through the crypts would be the perfect way to do that. I doubt Bran telling Jon Snow his true lineage will be what prevents Bran from noticing this attack if it does go down that way. I think it makes more sense for it to be something more realistic, like the Night King will block Bran's vision as he's attacking underneath. Or maybe it just happens so quickly that even though Bran is able to find out about it, it's still too late and there's nothing they can do. Now, if you want to watch those videos in full detail, like I said earlier, they are linked down below in the description, and go check them out. Now, and just sort of wrapping this video up, towards the end of the EW article, Dan and Dave are poked and prodded about the finale. They are going to be the ones directing the finale, and it mentions that, this is information that we all knew. They've had the ending in their heads for nearly 11 years. They've been working on this show with George R. R. Martin since 2009, so they've known for a while how it was going to end. They don't give any actual spoilers about what the finale entails, but they do mention that it's going to have a range of emotions. Not every single person who watches it is going to like it, and well, to be honest, that's to be expected. We all know that almost every single finale from every single TV show has been, for the most part, controversial in some way. Now, they mentioned that they want their ending of Game of Thrones to be similar to the ending of Breaking Bad, where instead of people arguing about whether it was good or whether it was bad, people argue about whether it was good or really good, whether it was an A or an A+. That's how they envision the ending of Game of Thrones to be, and in my opinion, well, we're gonna get just that. There's no way that this many people working on this great of a show, this big of a show, will go out any other way than how it started, which was amazing. Now, we're going to be getting a trailer tomorrow. There's still a small chance, I guess, that they could release it at some point today, but we've already gotten so much information for Game of Thrones, I feel like our brains would overload and melt into themselves if they did release the trailer. But as of right now, the rumor is that it will be out sometime between noon, which is 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 11 p.m. So please go to Game of Thrones YouTube channel and make sure you have those notifications turned on so that way you are alerted as soon as they drop that trailer. Not gonna lie, I probably won't get any sleep tonight. Alright, and with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please, slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 1,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then, this is the most important part, make sure you have your notifications turned on, so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. A super special shout out to my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews, and a super special shout out to every single person watching this video right now. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunts Reviews.